Mysticism, the quest for direct encounter with the divine, has beckoned seekers in every age. In the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, mystical traditions offer a deeply personal, experiential approach to faith. Unlike formal rituals or dogmas, mysticism represents an exploration of direct, personal experiences of God, often marked by feelings of unity and transcendence. It is popularly described as becoming one with God or suggesting a union or intimate presence beyond ordinary worship. Mystics yearn to shut the eyes and mouth to experience mystery. As the Greek roots of the word imply, they seek a truth felt in the soul rather than just read in scripture, a secret inner journey that sometimes challenges the conventions of organized religion. From solitary monks in the desert and Sufi dervishes dancing in ecstasy, to Kabbalists whispering ancient names of God, these mystics often walk an unconventional path. Their experiences can be ecstatic, unsettling, even controversial. In their own faith communities, mystics have been revered as saints by some and reviled as heretics by others. This documentary exploration will shine light on a few of these mystical traditions within Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Asking along the way, were these faiths meant to be rule-bound and scripture-focused, or do their truest truths lie in lived, transcendent experience? Is mysticism the purest path to the divine? And can its intense personal spirituality coexist with the structures of organized religion? We begin our journey with the mystical poets and saints of Islam, the Sufis, who find God in music, love, and sometimes even in madness. In Islam, the mystical tradition is Sufism, often called the inner dimension of the faith. Sufis seek a direct love relationship with Allah, aiming to experience the presence of God in the heart through prayer, poetry, music, and devotion. Many Sufis live simply and wander, teaching through parables and ecstatic poems. While mainstream Islamic practice emphasizes law and doctrine, Sufism focuses on the soul's longing for God, sometimes putting it at odds with orthodox scholars. The Sufi ideal is to die before death, to extinguish the ego in God's love, fana, and live in a state of constant remembrance of the divine, dhikr. One of the most celebrated Sufis is Jalal ad-Din Rumi, or more popularly known as just Rumi, a Persian mystic and poet whose words continue to inspire worldwide. Rumi began as a conventional Islamic scholar in Konya, modern Turkey, until he met a wandering dervish, Shams of Tabriz, who utterly transformed him. Legend has it that when they first met, Shams found Rumi poring over a stack of scholarly books and, in a dramatic gesture, threw the books into a fountain. Rumi was astonished to see the volumes emerge completely dry, a miracle hinting at a knowledge beyond the written page. This encounter jolted Rumi into an ecstatic new awareness of God. He abandoned his detached scholarly persona and became a lover of God, pouring forth poetry. He would even whirl in public, enraptured by music or the simple rhythm of a blacksmith's hammer, hearing in his ring the name Allah. Rumi's followers formed the Mevlevi order, the whirling dervishes, who spin in meditation to this day. In their ritual dance, Sema, arms extended with one hand upward and one downward, they symbolize bringing divine blessing down to earth. Rumi's poetry captures the Sufi ethos of love and union. The soul is a reed flute crying out for the reed bed, God, from which it was cue. I am hopelessly in love with God, he declares in essence, teaching that through love, the self dissolves and one realizes only God truly exists. Little wonder that Rumi could write, "In the arms of the beloved I am no more, and yet I am truly myself." Another Sufi mystic, 2 centuries before Rumi, pushed the expression of a divine union to a daring extreme. Mansur al-Hallaj was a wandering Sufi teacher who became infamous for declaring Ana al-Haq, meaning "I am the truth," in effect identifying himself with Go. In Sufi terms, al-Hallaj meant that in a moment of mystical ecstasy, he had annihilated his ego, and all that remained was God's presence speaking through him. But to orthodox Muslim authorities, this sounded like shocking blasphemy, a human claiming divinity. Al-Hallaj's open, ecstatic utterances and his willingness to share mystical teachings with the masses drew the ire of both political and religious leaders. He was imprisoned and, after a lengthy trial, executed in Baghdad in 922. It is said he went to the gallows serenely, even forgiving his executioners as his limbs were cut off. In death, al-Hallaj became a martyr of Sufism, a symbol of the costs and heights of mystical love. Later Sufis revered him as an intoxicated lover of God who spoke truth that soberer minds could not grasp. His fate underscored the tension between mysticism and orthodoxy in Islam. How can one who truly experiences the one God speak of I and God as separate at all? Al-Hallaj's answer was to effectively lose the I. But Orthodox Islam, fiercely monotheistic, grew wary of language that blurred the line between creator and creation. Was he a heretic, or a saint drunk on the wine of divine love? The debate endures in Islamic thought. Mystical devotion in Islam was not limited to men or to such dramatic pronouncements. Rabi'a al-Adawiyya of Basra, one of the earliest Sufi saints, exemplified a path of pure divine love. Rabi'a, a woman who lived in austerity and prayer, taught that God should be loved for his own sake, not out of fear of hell or desire for paradise. One famous story recounts Rabi'a walking through Baghdad with a bucket of water in one hand and a torch in the other. When asked what she was doing, she replied, "I want to quench the fires of hell with water and burn down paradise with fire, so that people will worship God for no other reason than love." Such radical sincerity struck her contemporaries as almost scandalous. After all, the Quran speaks plenty of hell and heaven. But Rabi'a was making a point. True faith, in her eyes, goes beyond bargaining with God. She even prayed that if she ever served God from fear of punishment or hope of reward, she should be punished, and only if she worshipped out of love alone should she be blessed. This total surrender to love set the tone for later Sufi literature, which often describes the seeker as the lover and God as the beloved. Rabi'a's life also highlights that Sufism, while sometimes unorthodox in expression, can lead to profound piety and virtue admired even by non-mystics. She lived a life of humility, chastity, and service, consumed by love. In this sense, the mystic can be seen as the heart of religion, keeping the flame of devotion burning, even as the outward forms are tended by theologians and jurists. Sufism eventually spread throughout the Islamic world, forming various orders or tariqas, each with their own practices, from the whirling of Rumi's Mevlevis to the rhythmic chanting of the Chishtis in India. Orthodox opposition flared at times, especially when Sufis were seen to deviate from Islamic law, or when their metaphorical teachings, like unity with God, were taken too literally. In some eras, Sufi lodges were shut down or persecuted by puritanical regimes, yet Sufism persisted as an integral part of Islam. Many of the most beloved Islamic scholars and poets, Al-Ghazali, Hafez, Ibn Arabi, were Sufis or deeply influenced by mysticism. Their writings often bridge the gap, showing that mystical insight and orthodox faith need not contradict. Indeed, Sufis argue that the Prophet Muhammad himself had mystical experiences, such as the night journey through the heavens, and that the inner reality or haqiqah of Islam complements its outer law, Sharia. Is Islam then meant to be a set of rules or a path to experiencing God? Sufis would say both. The law is a vessel, the mystical love its wine. For those with ears to hear, Rumi's flute still sings the same note as the muezzin's call, an invitation to unity with the divine. From its earliest days, Christianity has had an undercurrent of mysticism, a desire not just to believe in God, but to experience God directly. The New Testament itself recounts mystical events: St. Paul taken up to the third heaven, St. John beholding heavenly visions in Revelation. After the apostolic age, as the church became more institutional, individuals seeking a transcendent encounter with God often gravitated to monastic or hermit life. In the 3rd and 4th centuries, the deserts of Egypt and Syria teemed with seekers known as the Desert Fathers and Mothers. Foremost among them was Saint Anthony of Egypt, who retreated into the desert to live in prayer and solitude. Anthony's biography by Athanasius paints him as a spiritual warrior. He endured terrifying demonic visions during his isolation, the devil attacking in the form of wild beasts, yet Anthony drove them off by the power of Christ's name. After 20 years in seclusion, Anthony emerged radiant and serene, having attained a state of apatheia, or freedom from passion, that astonished onlooker. He became a guiding light for early Christian monasticism. The legacy of the Desert Fathers was a tradition of contemplative prayer and asceticism that sought to purify the heart for God alone. They reported visions of angels, deep silence punctuated by the voice of God, and intense inner battles with temptation. Their wisdom, collected in sayings and stories, emphasizes humility, charity, and ceaseless prayer, values that greatly influence Eastern Christian spirituality. For instance, the Jesus prayer of the later orthodox mystics. The mainstream church respected these hermits and monks as models of holiness, yet there was still a subtle tension. Their authority came from personal holiness and charisma more than official position. People flocked to the desert for guidance, effectively bypassing the local clergy at times. The church mitigated this by bringing monasticism into its structure, forming organized orders and rules. Still, the mystical flame lit by the desert dwellers continued to burn through the Middle Ages in the various forms. By medieval times, Christian mysticism often flourished within religious orders. Monasteries became centers not only of learning, but of deep prayer. Mystics like Hildegard of Bingen in Germany, Meister Eckhart, and the great Spanish mystics of the 16th century all arose from monastic or mendicant contexts. Let us focus on two Spanish Carmelite mystics, Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, who vividly exemplify the heights of Christian mystical experience, and the tightrope mystics walked with church authority. Teresa of Avila was a Carmelite nun and reformer who experienced remarkable mystical phenomena. A woman of strong personality and practical skills, she founded over a dozen convents. Teresa also had a rich inner life of prayer. She wrote of progressing through interior mansions of the soul, drawing closer to God in each stage. At the deepest levels, she experienced what she called spiritual marriage, an intense union of her soul with God's presence. Teresa reported visions of Christ, of angels, and moments of ecstasy so powerful they caused her to faint or even levitate off the ground in prey. One of her most famous mystical experiences is the transverberation, or piercing of her heart. In her autobiography, Teresa describes how she saw a seraphim angel beside her, holding a golden spear. He pierced my heart with the fiery tip of the lance, leaving me on fire with a great love of God. The pain was sweet. I never wanted it to end. In that moment, she felt utterly united to God's love. Her description inspired artists, most famously Gian Lorenzo Bernini, whose sculpture, The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, renders in marble the swooning nun and the angel with the spear. Despite such sublime moments, Teresa remained grounded. She continued to manage her convents and write practical advice on prayer. Importantly, she did not see her experiences as an end in themselves, but as fuel for greater love and service. She also understood the need to discern true mysticism from illusion. Living in the fervently Catholic Spain of the Counter-Reformation, Teresa's visions drew the attention of the Inquisition, which was vigilant about heresy or false revelations. She had to undergo examinations by theologians to ensure her experiences were of God and not delusions of the devil. Teresa humbly submitted her visions to her confessor's judgment. Ultimately, her authenticity shone through. She was never condemned, and after her death, the Church not only canonized her, but eventually declared her a doctor of the Church for her profound writings on prayer. Still, her journey illustrates that mysticism and orthodoxy coexisted uneasily. Teresa reformed her Carmelite order to more strict devotion, facing opposition from some comfortable friars, all the while maintaining loyalty to the Church. She asked, if someone's mystical revelation contradicted Church teaching, how could they be sure it was from God? Thus acknowledging the Church's role in guiding souls. Teresa's life shows a mystic can thrive within orthodoxy, but with careful navigation. Her legacy is one of an infectious love of God. In her writings, she speaks as a friend, coaxing you into the divine embrace, assuring that God desires to communicate personally with every soul. Teresa's contemporary and spiritual friend, Saint John of the Cross, offers another perspective on Christian mysticism. If Teresa emphasized the sweetness of union, John emphasized the struggle and purification required to get there. He is famous for the concept of the dark night of the soul. According to John, the soul seeking God must pass through a crucible of apparent abandonment and darkness. As God draws a soul into closer union, he first withdraws the feeling of his presence, plunging the soul into a night of aridity, doubt, even despair. This is not punishment but mercy. It purges the soul of attachments and false comforts. In John's words, the purpose of this dark night is to annihilate and undo the self's habits so that the divine light may infuse the soul. To our natural faculties, this intense divine light is blinding. Thus, it feels like darkness. But when the purgation is complete, the dawn of union breaks. The soul becomes illuminated and united with God in a bond of love so tight that John likens it to marriage. In his poetry, John describes the soul as a bride running out at night, guided by love alone, to meet her beloved God in secret. The journey is perilous and painful, but culminates in a joyous consummation. O night that united the lover with his beloved, he exults. John of the Cross wrote these works while enduring his own trials. He was imprisoned in a tiny cell by members of his Carmelite order who opposed the reforms he and Teresa were advocating. In that dark cell, John composed poems and communed with God, embodying the very dark night he later explained. Eventually he escaped and his reform discalced Carmelites prevailed. After his death, the once suspect mystic was also canonized and acclaimed for his mystical theology. John's teachings have consoled generations of seekers who find themselves in spiritual dryness, assuring them that sometimes the feeling of God's absence is actually a sign of his purifying presence. Like Teresa, John remained a loyal son of the Church. He emphasized that the cross, suffering, is the path to God, very much in line with Christian doctrine. Yet his penetrating insight into the soul's journey went far beyond routine religion, mapping out stages of contemplation that few experience fully. The Church came to treasure this map, but only after initially misunderstanding him. Across the span of Christian history, countless other mystics could be mentioned, from Meister Eckhart, the German Dominican who taught the soul spark is one with God and was posthumously scrutinized for possible heresy, to Saint Catherine of Siena, who saw Christ in visions and received the stigmata, to Brother Lawrence, a humble cook who practiced God's presence in the 17th century. Each faced the task of articulating the ineffable and often had to defend their experiences. Over time, the Catholic Church and other Christian traditions developed ways to discern mysticism, requiring that private revelations never contradict Scripture, that the person exhibit humility and good fruits, etc. In many cases, the hierarchy encouraged mystics. For example, the 14th century English anchoress, Julian of Norwich, was supported by clergy as she wrote her revelations of divine love. But in other cases, they censored them. Meister Eckhart had some propositions condemned. The Protestant Reformation and Catholic Counter-Reformation. On the surface, Judaism looks like a religion of law and tradition, detailed rules, sacred texts, generations of study. But beneath it, there's a quieter current, a deep hunger for direct experience of God. A mystical stream called Kabbalah, meaning receiving, passed carefully from teacher to student. Mysticism was seen as powerful and dangerous. A famous story says 4 sages entered the mystical realm. One died, one went mad, one lost his faith. Only Rabbi Akiva entered and left in peace. Mysticism was not for the unprepared. Early Jewish mystics, called Merkava mystics, meditated on visions of the divine chariot. Later, in the 13th century, the Zohar emerged, a mystical commentary on the Torah. It taught that God's light flows through 10 emanations, the Sephirot, and that human actions can repair the broken world by reconnecting to the divine. In the 1500s, a major shift happened in Safed, a town in Ottoman Palestine. Rabbi Isaac Luria, known as the Ari, taught that God had to contract himself at Tzimtzum to make space for the universe. But the vessels holding God's light shattered. Pieces of that divine light are now trapped in the world. Our mission? To find them. Every prayer, every good deed helps heal the cosmic wounds, a process called Tikkun Olam. Luria's ideas caught fire. Legends said he could see souls, speak with prophets, even detect sins by reading faces. Safed became a holy city, and Lurianic Kabbalah spread quietly but deeply into Jewish thought. But not without risk. In the 1600s, a self-proclaimed Messiah, Shabbatai Tzvi, inspired by Kabbalah, led thousands astray before his spectacular fall. It was a warning. Mysticism, if unmoored, could bring chaos. In the 1700s, Mysticism found new life through a very different figure, the Baal Shem Tov. He wasn't a scholar. He was a healer, a storyteller, a man of the people. His movement, Hasidism, brought the mystical experience down to earth, into the fields, the taverns, the daily life of peasants. The Baal Shem Tov taught that God could be found everywhere, even in a simple prayer, even in a cup of tea. Hasidim danced, sang, and prayed with ecstatic joy. Mystical teachings were no longer hidden. They were sung around village fires. Traditional rabbis pushed back. They feared wild emotions and miracle claims might corrupt the faith. But Hasidism survived, thrived, and eventually reshaped Jewish life across Eastern Europe. At its heart, Hasidism kept a balance, staying loyal to Jewish law while lighting it up from within with mystical passion. Mysticism was no longer the secret of scholars. It became the soul of the people. Today, Kabbalah and Hasidic teachings are woven into Judaism's tapestry. Whether through studying ancient texts or joining a Rebbe's gathering, the mystical spark endures, a reminder that Judaism is not just about following laws, but about seeking the living, breathing presence of God within them. Across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, mystics speak a common language of unity, of light, of love. Whether it's a Sufi dissolving into God, a Christian saint lost in prayer, or a Kabbalist meditating at midnight, the story is the same: losing the self to touch something infinite. Though their words and symbols differ, the heart of the experience feels shared. Rumi said it best: "The lamps are different, but the light is the same." Mystics remind us that religion isn't just about rules or beliefs. It's about a living relationship with the divine. They inspire devotion, but they also challenge traditions, stretching the boundaries of faith. Structured religion gives stability. Mysticism brings it alive. Both are needed. One grounds the other. The mystical path isn't only for saints and sages. It's open to anyone willing to seek, to yearn, to listen. As we end this journey, picture a Sufi, a monk, and a rabbi, each gazing into the vast night sky, caught in the same wonder. Maybe, just maybe, all souls meet there in the end. And so a question is left for you. Is there a spark of that longing in your own heart? If so, the path is open. Step gently. Look up. The beloved awaits.